everybody, it's Mark and Phil from Crossover Technologies. Welcome to our longer version of the review of 2019. So Phil, just recap, how was it for golf retail in 2019?
Well, according to the Golf Data Tech Retail Audit, which audits both the on and the off course, it looks like the market was down. Unfortunately, it's down about 1.25% overall. Generally, you could consider that's not drastic because overall retail is down about that, and that's probably a bit more susceptible. But yeah, market's down, unfortunately, driven predominantly by the second half of the year.
Okay, and again, the split between on-course, off-course?
On-course, off-course. On-course was about flat, actually, so well, not too bad there. Off-course was down a little bit more, maybe 3% or so for the year. But considering the changes in the marketplace and the what's happened with one of the major off-course retailers, it's a pretty good performance, actually, and obviously it looks like they've made some recovery there, so that's good news.
Okay, awesome. And then let's delve a bit more deeper into the category side of things. So tell me about the best and worst performers.
Well, generally clubs were up. They were driven by strong performances from irons and putters. Woods and wedges were down just a little bit, just a little softer this year, but it was an iron year, and we tend to find that year on year. Apparel is the area that's really had a tough time, nearly double digits down across most apparel categories. The worst performing category in the entire mix that we audit was actually bottoms, ladies' bottoms. So both men's and ladies' trousers, shorts, etc. really suffered quite badly. Probably again an indicator that the really wet summer, not enough shorts sold, etc. So that would be a big contributor. So mix, generally clubs up, apparel down.
So what about the reasons then, Phil? Why are the categories suffering so much?
Okay, well, I think generally there's been a lot of turmoil with Brexit and the government, etc., and I'm sure that's maybe had a slight effect. But if you look at things like irons, high value, distance devices, high value, they've actually had good years this year, so people are still spending money. I think really when we get down to it, and it's not an excuse that we like to use, but it's the reality of the game, it's the weather. If you look at the weather stats, the start, as I said, first half of the year was dry, less than average rainfall, even with very wet June, we had a really good start to the year, more percentage up. The second half of the year, H2, we had 20% more rain in volume, we had 20% more rain days, so actually we lost about 15 days of golf, I reckon, to the rain. And you take that out of the season, that's quite a lot to cover, and hence, the second half of the year was over 3.5% down. So it was a bad second half. Everyone recognises it's wet. It was a very wet period, and I think that's really had an impact on the sales figures.
Okay, so disappointing numbers for 2019, but okay, I'm a golf pro, I'm sat there and it's pouring rain outside. How does that help me? What can I do with those numbers?
Okay, well, golf pro, supplier, anyone along those lines, the key things are going to be inventory. We had a good start of the year. If a lot of people had reordered and increased their inventory or increased their orders, then they could be sitting on a bit more inventory than's desirable. I actually think, looking at the stats, the inventories are pretty good, so that's probably not happened. But any of the kind of excitement from having a really good start to the year, if that could have impacted people's forward orders. So again, with all these things, when it's difficult, we've got to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves with too much stock, because if you do, then obviously you're going to have to clear it out, and then that's obviously a challenge. So managing those forward orders, making sure that we haven't gone too heavy, again focusing on the categories that have worked in your business. We've had an irons year this year, raise the question whether it will be another irons year next year. Chances are it won't. It tends to shift around a little bit. Maybe we'll see a little resurgence in the apparel. Again, people haven't bought as much last year as they did this year, so there might be some upsides on that. But really, I think one thing which we have to watch out is that overcommitment with the uncertainty of the weather is something we want to try and avoid as much as possible. So working with those suppliers to making sure that we've got sensible orders and sensible stocking plans and products, hopefully, that will shift when it comes to the time.
Obviously, from my point of view, again, one thing I see certainly is that this is a review of the whole year, so a lot of data, a lot of information there. Key thing we find is that you've got to be keeping an eye on this, seeing how the trends go throughout the year, so reviewing this every month. We always come out with the key numbers, so keep an eye on those, see how it changes, because it ebbs and flows throughout the year. Things change as circumstances change.
Yeah, it's just being on top of your business, knowing your numbers, knowing whether it's the right time for a sale or a clearance, or even if you don't need to have a sale and a clearance. Had some kind of interesting stories this year where people didn't do sales, maintain sales prices. That's a healthy thing for the industry. So there's positives. We're not in one of these industries that are very drastically up and down. It tends to ebb and flow, which is something that's beneficial, because it should make it easier for us for planning terms. So that's positive.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Phil. Thanks for a review of 2019. Obviously, we'll be back with the latest numbers for 2020. Fingers crossed they're a bit better, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers.